Hello Braves fans, welcome to another edition of State of the Braves. I'm your host George McNair. It is great to be back with you. We are still in the doldrums of the MLB lockout. This is a period of time that we're starting to get a little nervous about what might be going on in those meetings, as the last time they spoke was only about a 15-minute meeting. And so we are very hopeful, us Braves fans and baseball fans generally, that something is going to get done. Both MLB and the Players Association don't seem to be all that interested in reaching any kind of agreement sometime soon. So hopefully they will get their act together and we will not lose any baseball. So again, this podcast right now, I'm dedicating a lot of these episodes to what the Braves need to do once the lockout ends. Of course, I'm assuming at some point the lockout will actually end. So let's hope that happens. So last time I spoke to you guys, I went over what the Braves needed to do, their number one thing this offseason to do, and that is, of course, re-sign Freddie Freeman. So go back to that episode if you want to hear all my reasons why the Braves should bring back Freddie, and also a couple of reasons why they might be thinking twice about it. Hopefully they will ignore those reasons and bring back the obvious leader and one of the best players in baseball for the Braves. They need him. So this episode is about the number two thing the Braves need to do this offseason. And you can really, in some ways, link these two things together. Both re-signing Freddie and this number two thing, which is figure out a way to move Marcel Ozuna. These two things need to happen very quickly as soon as the lockout ends. So those of you who are perhaps new to the Marcel Ozuna saga, I just want to give you a very brief rundown of what happened last season and then what's going on into this year. So Marcel Ozuna, about a third of the way through last season, was arrested for domestic violence, potential incident, well, not potential, an incident between him and his wife. He was suspended for the remainder of last season, so did not take part in any of the amazing run that the Braves had to the World Series. And then only this offseason did the Braves learn that his suspension would be lifted and he would be fully reinstated for this season. So the question is, what do you do with Marcel Ozuna moving forward? He was an MVP candidate in the shortened 2020 season, so incredibly talented, particularly from the offensive side of the game. Limited defensively, but here we have potentially, or it sounds like definitely, that the DH is coming to the National League. So in terms of on the field, it seems like Marcell Ozuna would perhaps slide in very nicely back into the Braves lineup, but there's all of these different things in play as to do you bring him back or not based off of the field issues, the impact to the clubhouse, all those different things. So we're going to get into some potential things that the Braves need to toss around, the options regarding Marcel Ozuna and what they should do this offseason. So option, I'm just going to go through each option really quickly and then I'll break down each one from there. So option one would be to cut Marcel Ozuna. So you simply get rid of him, you eat the money. This is a significant amount of money. He is still owed $48 million over the next 3 years. And so, that is obviously going to be painful if the Braves were to do that. Option two would be to trade him for another bad contract of a player that exists on another team. Option three would be to trade him and prospects to potentially unload more of his money. But then again, that's even more painful in some ways because you're also losing some good prospects out of this. And then the last option would be, of course, to keep Marcel Ozuna and ride out the remainder of his contract. So I want to kind of dive into each of these options. But obviously these first three options are all about getting rid of Marcel Ozuna. And so here generally are some reasons why I think the Braves should strongly consider getting rid of Marcel. And I just want to make sure that I say this, recognize that I don't know all the facts of the Ozuna case, of course. Only probably a very few people do know exactly what happened with him and his wife. So I'm not going to make any judgments on that. Just trying to keep things on the field and in the clubhouse. So even if he is remorseful about his role in what happened last year. I just don't see that. I don't see how his presence will be beneficial to the Braves, how it will be best for the team to try to reinsert him into the clubhouse. He did something that's not only reprehensible, but also something that hurt the team in the process. You know, you're not an island of yourself. Your actions certainly impact other people. And, you know, the more serious thing, obviously, is how this impacted his family, but it also impacted his teammates and what they were trying to do in the middle of the season. I think it absolutely hurt them. I think some of their mid-season struggles were around this. It wasn't really talked about on, you know, on the broadcast and that sort of thing. But I mean, how could it not affect you when one of your friends, you know, all of this comes to light, your teammate, all this, you know, and then of course losing him just in the lineup has a lot of impact. So I just imagine that trying to bring him back is going to cause a lot of division within the locker room. You're going to have some guys who want to embrace him and bring him back immediately. You're going to have other guys who probably want no part of him, and then everybody in between. And you can just see how this is going to insert an issue into the clubhouse that, I mean, why would you really want to do that? The other thing to keep in mind is even though he had a great 2020 season, Marcel had he was having a very poor 2021 season. Only hit a few home runs, and he's a power hitter. I mean, I think he was hitting around 200 when he actually got injured. And then after his injuries, when he got suspended for the domestic violence incident. So you might not, you know, his value even on the field is kind of questionable because of all of his struggles that he was having last season. All right, so let's go ahead and get into each of these options now that we've kind of covered generally my thoughts as to why you might want to get rid of Marcel. So the first option is to cut him. And like I said, this is a painful option. It is the quickest option, and that matters because acting quickly, you know, with this lockout, you're not going to have a lot of time to get things done and shape your team. So I think quick action is very beneficial. But again, he is owed $48 million over the next 3 years of this contract. So by eating all of that money, the Braves are not, you know, the Yankees in terms of they can just eat that kind of money, or the Dodgers, and not feel it. They would definitely feel it, and it would probably limit what they could do this offseason. So there's definitely some negatives to doing that. So much of what you can do to build the team might be hindered, but you would get quick resolution out of this. You also would get some clarity on some of your most important needs, which is outfield and DH. If he's going to be there, then you really don't have a need at DH. But if he's not, then obviously it at least opens up one need that you would still have to address quickly this offseason. In later, probably our next podcast episode, I will address some of the outfield and DH needs. So look forward to that. The other thing that I've already mentioned, I think I mentioned it in the Freddie Freeman episode last time, is that this should not be a prerequisite for signing Freddie Freeman. In other words, signing Freddie should be the first thing you do. You shouldn't have to say, well, you know, if we can unload some of Marcel's money, then we can add a little more to Freddie. Freddie, sorry, you got to wait until we can figure this out first. I think you need to move on Freddie first. All right, so now we get to what I think might be the most important thing that is being overlooked, and the most important thing to consider when talking about potentially bringing back Marcell Ozuna, and that is the connection to Freddie Freeman. You know, we have Freddie not under contract. We have Marcel under contract, and you know, in my mind, those things need to be reversed. But what I don't think can happen is that you allow Freddie to go in free agency and you bring back Marcel Ozuna. I think the message that sends to the Braves fans and to the rest of the guys in the clubhouse is just terrible. We know the quality of character of Freddie Freeman. We know what kind of leader he is. He's been a Brave for so long and been so loyal and all those things. And I think it would just leave a tremendously bad taste in the mouths of a lot of people if Ozuna is wearing a Braves uniform next year, and Freddie Freeman is not. If you can just think about, that, picture that, and envision that for next season, I think it's a pretty stark thing to think about. And so I really hope that the Braves are considering that impact that it could really have on the organization long term, and that doesn't happen. So the next thing that I want to consider in terms of Ozuna is the option of dumping his contract, or at least part of his contract, and how that might be more valuable than just eating his money. Because again, the Braves seem to be operating more regarding dollars and cents than just about what's best on the field. Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. The Braves are not the New York Yankees. They're not the Dodgers. They certainly have to consider the cost of players. So it's not going to be near as easy for them to just simply dump $48 million and not worry about it. So the next thing I want to do is really dive into some of the potential dudes out there who they might be willing to target. These guys are under bad contracts as well. Ozuna, the thing about Ozuna is he has some value as an actual player. I mean, even though he was having a bad 2021, there's still some hope that he's not totally out of his prime, that he could come in and actually be a fairly elite hitter again. And so if there's a team that believes that he can do that and is, willing to believe that he's turned a corner personally, or, that sort of thing, maybe there's a team out there that's willing to give him a second chance. So, keeping that in mind, I think a team that would be willing to take on Ozuna is probably a team that either, has money to burn and really has a need for another big right-handed hitter, or potentially a team that is really looking to bring on some prospects. Maybe they're a team that has a weak farm system, and so the Braves could package some prospects with Ozuna to make a deal like this happen. None of these guys are going to be, sexy picks. They're not going to be guys that will likely be huge difference makers for Atlanta. They tend to be guys that are on the back end of their career and are being overpaid right now, and that's why we would consider them being having a bad contract. So this is not a place really you want to be in. Unfortunately, it's a place that Braves fans are kind of familiar with. I mean, you think back not too long ago, Matt Kemp. We took on his contract for a bad contract. You think to BJ Upton. I'll get into BJ in a little bit, and we'll kind of revisit that move and kind of what you have to package together in order to move a bad contract. So this is not new to Braves fans, unfortunately, but this is the price you pay for making a deal that you shouldn't have made. And unfortunately, I don't fault Anthopoulos too much for making this deal. You didn't know what was going to happen with the domestic violence incident, but it did happen, and so here we are. So anyways, here are some possible guys that I foresee the Braves going after if they can exchange Ozuna's contract in return. So the first is Madison Bumgardner. This is a big name guy. He's going to sound like a Hall of Famer, and I don't know, maybe he would be in the future, but he has tremendous postseason exploits, but he's a few years removed from that, and he's a shoulder injury removed from that. He's never really been the same since that shoulder injury. Here he is with the Diamondbacks. He's going to make $58 million total over 3 years. So why would the Diamondbacks make this move? This is one where I think this is a little less likely, just because unless the Braves pair some prospects to this, because I just don't see why the Diamondbacks would just want to bring in Ozuna. And I think Bumgardner is well respected in that clubhouse, even though he hasn't really done much on the field lately. The next guy, and I also want to mention this, the Braves do need a back-end starter, and so even though he's incredibly expensive for that, he would at the very least fill that role. So there is some value to maybe exploring that. All right, so the next guy I want to explore is someone that Braves fans are very familiar with, and that is Jason Hayward. And yes, you heard me right, potentially bringing back Jason Hayward. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with Hayward. I loved this guy when he came up with the Braves. He looked like the next great Brave, might have his, number retired one day. And after one or two good seasons, Braves fans, it just all fell apart for him. And I think it all comes down to his swing. I've never liked his swing. He rolls over balls all the time. And as elite as he has been in right field, he just can't consistently put the bat on the ball, particularly with any authority for as big of a dude as he is. But nonetheless, I really do respect Hayward personally. He is, a great clubhouse guy. He's great in right field, so he's going to bring a lot, just not a lot of hitting. So, you bring him in, he's making $49 million over the next 2 years. This is kind of a notorious contract that the Cubs gave to Hayward. And so, yeah, you're overpaying him. You're bringing him in. You're not really saving any money, but at the very least, you're getting a serviceable outfielder, and you're able to dump Ozuna. So is this one my favorite option out of these guys? No, it's not. But, Hayward is a really solid dude. And if you are assuming that Freddie Freeman is coming back, it's well known that these guys are like best friends. So I'm sure Freddie would love for him to come in, and it would certainly be a seamless thing in the clubhouse, which is one of my biggest issues of why I want to dump Ozuna. So hey, bringing Freddie or bringing Jason Hayward back, maybe it even improves the clubhouse some. But I just don't know how much you're going to get on the field. All right, my number 3 guy is Justin Upton. He is making $28 million, but this is the final year of a massive contract that the Angels gave him. He's very much getting up there in age. He also, he can still hit some home runs. He's still got power. He can do some things with the bat. He probably would certainly slide into that DH role as the DH is coming to the National League next year. And I think one of the biggest positives to this is that $28 million is a ton of money, but it is only, it's over 1 year, and you get through next year and you're done with it. You can allow him to move on. Hopefully you get something out of him, but then you're done with it. And so it might limit you for this season because that's so much money to commit for one season. But I think this one is actually one of the more likely partners you could find. The Angels, on the field, Ozuna is better than Upton, I think, at his best. And so maybe they view that as, they've been trying to get to the playoffs for a long time with Mike Trout, and maybe they would view this as a chance they would be willing to take. All right, Lorenzo Cain for the Milwaukee Brewers. He's only making, he's only making $18 million over 1 year. So this is the last year of his contract. Cain is often injured, but he's a pretty well-respected guy. He won a World Series with the Royals and was a star at that point in his career. So he's kind of past that. But, because of his contract, the Braves would probably have to attach 1 or 2 prospects to this deal. And again, that's assuming that the Brewers would even want to do this deal. So, would they? I don't know. But Cain might be someone that you could look to if the Brewers are looking to add some thump to their lineup. Okay, Mike Mastakis is the next guy. He is making $34 million over the next 2 years. He's kind of a second baseman, third baseman, maybe first baseman option. I think more than likely, actually, he would slide to a DH role as well. The benefit here is even though he hasn't had a great 1 or 2 previous seasons, he's not that far removed from being pretty good. And at least he brings you some power from the left side, which is, I think, a positive for the Braves lineup. Again, this is a guy that would probably slide into the DH role. So I don't know much about Mastakis in terms of, what he does in the clubhouse, how popular a guy he is, that sort of thing. But another guy that maybe you could look at. And he's not making quite as much, so you get maybe a little bit of savings on the back end, over only 2 years left on his deal. All right, and the last guy is also going to be very familiar to Braves fans, Josh Donaldson. So Donaldson, I think, is actually 37 now. He's definitely getting up there in age. He has $37 million remaining on 2 years of his contract. So, he will definitely be. And remember, Braves fans, the reason the Braves did not sign Donaldson and went after Ozuna in the first place was that extra year that that Minnesota was willing to give him. So now would they go out and sign him now? I don't know. But, he did have a great season for the Braves when he was there. This one would probably also require at least an additional prospect to get this done. And again, that is if Minnesota would even be willing to do this deal. So there's a lot of question marks with every one of these guys regarding would the team that they're with even want Ozuna. I do like the Justin Upton deal the most, just in terms of I think it could actually get done if the Angels are willing to consider it. All right, so I want to just revisit really quickly way back that B.J. Upton, we're talking about all the Uptons today, but B.J. Upton and his deal, where the Braves had to dump him and his contract to the Padres. I think this was in 2015. So this was at the beginnings of the Braves rebuild, which was very painful for all of us. Sorry to bring this up, but I think it's helpful to recall that and kind of what it took to dump a contract. Upton, I hated this deal when Frank Wren signed Upton. I didn't believe in Upton because he'd really only had one great year. And, it definitely didn't work out. He was a terrible Brave. I don't have anything against him personally, but he played terribly for the Braves. So the Braves sent B.J. Upton and Craig Kimbrell. All Braves fans love Craig Kimbrell. So they had to attach Kimbrell to this deal, and they got Matt Whistler, Carlos Quentin, Cameron Maben, Parabeck, and the 41st pick in the draft, which ended up being Austin Riley. So Riley kind of saved this deal, and in the long term, it's actually looks pretty good for the Braves simply because of Riley. But you can just picture, okay, the Braves really had to attach some significant value in order to get anything in return for Upton and Kimbrell. So that I think is helpful. I don't think the Braves are going to attach a current star to Ozuna. I don't see that happening unless they're just more desperate than we know to get to unload him. But I do see them maybe attaching one or two prospects to make it happen. The downside of that is the Braves don't have as many high quality prospects as they have in the past, and so they're dealing from a place of weakness instead of a place of strength. So that's never a good place to be in. But I do think that's what makes this a more likely thing to happen. All right, the last thing I want to do is consider the Braves bringing Marcell Ozuna back, and it should be no secret that I don't want that to happen. But let's at least consider this happening. I think the only way you can do this and do it well, if you're going to bring back Ozuna, is to re-sign Freddie Freeman. I kind of mentioned this already, how bad it would look if you bring back Ozuna and let Freddie go. But I also think the only way you can bring back Ozuna is if Freddie is in the clubhouse. He is your stability. He's your team leader. And if he's willing to give Ozuna a chance, and kind of unify the clubhouse, then I think it potentially works. It's not guaranteed to work, but I think it potentially works. So that's kind of on the field in the clubhouse. Now, even then, I don't like the potential that it brings, and I don't like the message it sends to Braves country that Marcel Ozuna is kind of welcome back with open arms. So there's so many unknowns about how that would work in the clubhouse that I just don't think you go there. That being said, Marcel could be totally remorseful, and he could be a changed man after this incident. He could come in, say all the right things. He could be the model teammate. He could be 100% motivated on and off the field. And it could end up being a wonderful story. I mean, I hope that he and his wife, all of that is okay. So yeah, all of that could happen, and you want to give a space for forgiveness and growth and all of those things. But I just don't think that it should happen in Atlanta, right? I wish Marcel the best. I hope he turns his life around. I hope all this is for the better for him. And that he is given a second chance somewhere. But I just don't think it should be with the Braves. I don't think his best chance is with Atlanta for those things to happen. Fresh start, second chance, and all that would maybe be best somewhere else. So, again, I think there are too many unknowns. I think there's too much chance for division in the clubhouse if you bring back Ozuna. So that's my take. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to follow State of the Braves and like the show on Spotify. And you can also check out my video format of the show on YouTube. See you soon, Braves fans. Have a good one.